So let's move on to the next question, which is, can I sell my business without a broker? And look, a great question. And I think a lot of it comes from one, can I potentially save some money? Two, do I really need somebody to, what does a broker do? And it's actually not an uncommon question. I have so many people, I meet at barbecues and they go, what exactly does a business broker do? How do they work? I think that selling a business is a highly complex process. Too many people relate it to or use the analogy of it's like selling a property. And it's, I guess, in some ways an easy analogy because particularly in Australia, home ownership is such a big deal. There's a really big focus in society and many people own a home or have been through that process. So, we're all trying to look for mental anchors we can hang on. But other than the fact that you're selling an asset, and it's usually a very large asset in your sort of personal portfolio, the differences kind of then disappear. Nobody ever walks into your business and says, oh geez, I really love the floor plan of your office and the local public transport's really nice. Let's just pay a bit more money for this business. That just does not happen. So if you're going to sell your business, I think you need to recognize that there is going to be a set of skills and requirements that will get you from where you are to where you need to be. And what you've learned in your business to date is probably not going to equip you very well. Another analogy I like to use is, if you needed to go and have brain surgery, you wouldn't pop along to your GP just because he's a doctor and he knows where your brain is, right? Like he might be better qualified than you to operate on your brain, but probably not the guy you want to handle such a sensitive and delicate topic. Now, having said that, do transactions go through without advisors? Look, they do. But I think the big question you've got to ask is, A, what risks am I not seeing because I'm just not aware they exist? And B, what kind of money could I be leaving on the table because I just don't know how to work around and negotiate some of these delicate topics? So, in theory, yes, everything can be done and you can work it all out yourself and you could probably operate on your own brain if you really wanted to, but yeah, not the sort of thing that I would go down and try myself. So let's cover off the key elements that a good broker will bring to the party for you. First of all, it is experience, right? If you're going to go for a hike through a jungle, wouldn't you feel a lot more confident if you've had somebody who has walked through that jungle before? They've walked that path, they know the environment, they know the things to look for. That kind of leading experience, we understand that in almost every other aspect of our life, but because selling businesses is quite a foreign concept for most people, they don't necessarily draw that parallel with this phase. So it is experience, and that experience doesn't just help you find more buyers, although a good broker will bring quality buyers. It's also providing some of the advice along the way that impacts business owners in an emotional way, right? It's one of my favourites is that nobody likes being told they've got an ugly child, and it's a bit of a harsh expression, but sometimes a buyer comes in and they'll make comments about your business purely as a part of the negotiating game. And then, of course, it's quite offensive. And I've seen business owners become quite irate. Hands hitting table, I'm not dealing with this guy anymore. And just not recognising that this is par for the course, it is quite normal. And a good broker or advisor knows how to hold your hand, walk you through it, deflect some of this stuff that you probably don't even need to hear, and just shelter you from the back and forth that a negotiation will typically or how a typical negotiation will play out. And I think that the add-on to that is that, as the owner and the seller of this business, there's a good chance you might end up hanging around for a while, right? The deal gets done, you get asked to, maybe you're doing an earn-out, maybe you're not, you're just doing a transition for a period of time. Well, let's say that period of time was 12 months. You now need to work with this buyer very closely, right? You might even be reporting to them. And so this arm's length negotiation piece is actually really important so that a good broker can not only ask the difficult questions of the buyer, they can also handle some of the difficult questions from the buyer, and you get to preserve your relationship and put you in a good position for a working relationship into the future. So let me give you a really good example. I've got a client that's in the civil construction space. They build roads, they do a range of different things. great business, very profitable. When we first started talking about a sale process, they were looking for a price of around $40 million. Having done some background work, we felt that price was quite reasonable, and there was maybe even some more upside to it. Somewhere between that conversation and us actually going to market, their expectations moved, which is also a dangerous thing to happen. But they decided somewhere in that phase that they actually wanted $50 million for the business. Now, we ended up actually with 3 buyers on this business, all putting in different offers. But the first one that came in was an international group. They'd put an offer of $52 million. Now, one of the things we talk a lot about is that money and terms go hand in hand. And so while the money was quite attractive, some of the terms were a little bit more challenging, not unreasonable, but just a little bit more challenging for the owner. And when we shared that offer with the clients, we ended up jumping on a call to debrief. I was sort of taken aback because the clients got on the call and they were hostile and angry and outraged about various things. And, I almost had to actually stop with them and say, look, I need you to explain to me how somebody offering you $52 million for your business is so insulting. You might not like all the terms, but it's an offer and it's a negotiating point and it's not designed to insult you. And so I guess having somebody who acts as an intermediary, not only helps shape some of this stuff, but also just protects you from a lot of the challenges and difficult conversations that are going to come with this journey.